Hey everybody, welcome to the Building Excellence Podcast. I have Jeff Smith here with me today. I'm really excited to have you on, so thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of get going and tell us a little bit about your story, like where you grew up and kind of about your upbringing.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Jeffrey Smith. I was born in 1981. I lived in and around Tulsa my entire life. My parents divorced when I was at an early age, and so I was raised by a single mother for the most part, and my great uncle came in and lived with us and helped get us through school and get us to all the activities. Had one sister when I was growing up, and it was great life lessons for me because, typically you're raised by, your parents or a single parent being, just one generation ahead of you. But I had the experience of having two generations ahead of me, and my great uncle at the time was in his late 60s into his 70s. So a very wise man, had served in the military, traveled the world, and so always listening to his stories and what he had done in his life. But he was very handy, knew how to do everything. In fact, I remember one of his Christmas presents, he received a clock in 100 pieces.
Really?
And it was like you can take anything apart and put it back together again. So here's your Christmas present. Here's this clock, and you get to put it together. But he was that type of person, and so he always instilled in me, like, work hard, take it upon yourself. Don't take your car in to get the oil change the oil yourself. I mean, things like that. And so really a teaching experience as I grew up. Graduated Broken Arrow High School in 1999. I had the privilege to play golf for Broken Arrow High School during my last couple of years there. Loved playing golf. It's a great sport, being individual sport, and also it's called the gentleman's game for a reason. And you're out there by yourself, and there's plenty of temptations to nudge your ball over or make a better lie, but really it was a great teaching experience for me, just to be like, even though this isn't the best opportunity, I'm going to go with it and fight my way out of it. And so I had a blast doing that, and great education from Broken Arrow High School, which then just led into my career life, and been working in different careers ever since.
Yeah. So how did you get involved in golf growing up?
So my grandfather played with a retired men's group at the Par 3 golf course, La Fortune, here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and he had gone to a garage. He was left-handed, and he had gone to a garage sale and found a used set of left-handed golf clubs, brought them to me, and I was like, well, Grandpa, this isn't going to work. Like, I'm not left-handed. But I would, go around the yard in his house with wiffle balls, and I would try left-handed. And after about 3 or 4 months, he was like, okay, I'm going to go get you a right-handed set of clubs. And grew up playing with him. And we would go out to the Par 3 at La Fortune. He would take me out there with his buddies at 6:30 in the morning. And we'd tee off and play 18 holes. And you could probably play in 2.5 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
And he would leave me there.
Really?
And I would go around that golf course like 4 or 5 more times, just playing by myself. I just absolutely loved it. If the weather was nice, I was always challenging myself. Hey, can I play better on this hole? Can I play better in this 9 holes? Can I play better in this round? And then my mother would come by after work at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, and she'd pick me up and go home. So it was a different way to start playing golf. Wasn't a country club golf by any means.
Yeah.
Wasn't even a regular par 72 course. It was the Par 3 at La Fortune that I grew up playing with my grandpa.
Yeah. And how old were you when you started doing this?
I was probably 10 or 11 years old when I started. Never played a competitive round of golf until I was probably 15. Didn't know they existed, besides on TV. I mean, you could see it on TV. But I didn't know there was junior tournaments out there. I figured there was probably high school. But in the late 90s, I mean, golf was still that sport that was like, oh, you played golf. You're one of those that plays golf. And so, you didn't scream about it. Tiger Woods wasn't around then.
Yeah.
And so you didn't have that excitement behind it. So it was really not until high school that I finally started to play competitively.
Really?
Yeah.
So how did that transition going out of high school? You wound up becoming a golf pro, right?
Yeah, correct? So when I was in high school and turned 16, a golf course in Broken Arrow called Battle Creek Golf Course has just opened. City of Broken Arrow on the golf course. And I was just enthralled with golf. I loved the landscape architecture of a golf course, the beauty of a golf course. And so I went out and applied for the cart barn position. I was probably 10th or 11th employee that they had ever hired at the golf course. 16 years old, and I parked carts every summer and then through school, and just kind of worked my way up. I was always the one that, if you said shift started at 4, I'd be there at 3:30 waiting for my shift to start. I was just a hard worker. When I ended up graduating high school, I moved into the pro shop, and that was a big deal for me because I didn't have to be in the hot temperatures anymore. But I worked in the pro shop that summer, and again, just proved to my bosses that I was dependable and a hard worker, and I would always be there and get the job done, and get it done right. And so they saw that in me, and they just kept elevating me into positions. And fortunate that other people ahead of me took other jobs and other career paths and decided to move on. And so by the time I was 20, so just in a few short years, the head pro at the time had left for another golf course, and I was the last man standing. Basically, I was the only assistant golf pro there at the time. And so I talked to the general manager, and we talked together, and it was like, you know what, we can handle this. And so de facto, I was the golf pro. I was the only pro that was there, and I went and got my PGA, not the tour card, but my PGA membership card. So I was a PGA golf professional for about 4 years, and taught people how to play golf, and got to be around it every day.
And then you went on tour, right?
Yeah, that's still happening. Maybe the senior tour someday.
Okay. Yeah. So it seems like 16 to 20, you become a golf pro. And then you kind of talk about how work ethic is something that's always been instilled in you. Was that something, obviously you talk about your growing up experiences, working hard, but was it something that was naturally instilled in you, do you think, or was it instilled over time? Or
I think it was naturally instilled in me. One of the best things that ever happened to me was my mother and my father both said, we're going to give you $2,000 each for your car. When you turn 16, we're going to give you $2,000. You can go get whatever car you want, but past that, if you want to drive it, you better have a job to get gas money. Mm-hmm. And you better have money to be able to change the oil or whatever it took. I mean, that was all on me. And so I wanted to be independent. I wanted to be able to go hang out with my buddies. I wanted to be able to run up to Sonic and get a slushie or things like that. And so I knew, the day I turned 16 and I had that car, I was like, I got to have a job, and I got to work hard, and I want to elevate. I don't want minimum wage. I want to elevate to where I'm respected in the workforce, and I was making more money. And so I've always had that attitude. Mm-hmm.
Were there certain people that you looked up to at a young age that kind of helped you become the person you became?
I would say, no big inspirational stories for me. I looked up to my mother more than anything. My sister and I, even though she had the support and help of a great family, she maintained her career. She never missed a softball game for my sister, a baseball game for me, a golf tournament eventually. She was always there. She found a way to get it done. And I didn't probably respect that as much at the time as I do, later on looking back. And I'm like, wow, for when you don't have that spouse support to be like, hey, you go take care of this kid tonight.
Absolutely.
It's all on one person. I really admired that. And I just knew that she worked hard. She would help mow the lawn. She would help, anything around the house. She didn't have that extra support to be able to have a lazy day around the house and have somebody else do the chores. It was all on her to get that done.
Yeah, so you had examples that were around you every single day that maybe you didn't realize until looking back, maybe.
Yeah.
But you had people around you that showed you those qualities that you. It
was probably the little things. It was every day, just like, hey, do this. Hey, make your bed every day. Make sure your room's cleaned. If the laundry's in there, make sure the laundry's put up. Mm-hmm. It was all those little things that now I take for granted, and I'm on my kids now about you need to get this done, because that was the way that I was treated. But it creates that work ethic in you, and that ability to go in and just tackle any project head on and see how well you can do it.
Mm-hmm. You have any favorite experiences growing up that you feel like shaped you aside from the ones you've already mentioned?
One golf story. So when I was playing golf in high school, I was probably the third or fourth best on the team, and Broken Arrow had a good team, but not a great team in the state at the time. And I remember my senior year state championship, we had qualified, and I had the opportunity to go play Karsten Creek in Stillwater, which is where OSU plays golf at. Most beautiful golf course I've ever played. And played the first round and didn't do all that well, and the second round the weather wasn't that great, and I just went out there, and obviously I wasn't going to win the tournament, and Broken Arrow probably wasn't going to win the tournament, and so it was just out there to play for myself, and everybody was struggling, and I was just taking it a hole at a time, and I was like, I'd make a par and I make a couple more pars, and I get on the 18th hole, and I'm only 5 over for the day. And I'm like, wow, I haven't shot in the 70s, very rarely, especially not on a golf course like Karsten Creek. And,
sure.
And I end up on the green, and I've got probably a 10-foot putt for par, and I make it. So I shoot 77, and I'm like, that is, for me, like that was a big deal. And then I go up to the scoreboard, and all these kids that are so much better than me are turning in scores of 80, 82, 85. And I end up shooting the second lowest score that day out of the probably 75 kids that play that round.
Yeah.
And I was middle of the pack at best. But again, it was just one of those things that there was a challenge out there that day, and I was taking it one step at a time and fighting my way through it. And to come out of that then with an accomplishment of saying, not only did I probably play the best round I'd ever played, but I played better than almost every other kid there that day. Mm-hmm. And the accomplishment of knowing that you can do something like that when you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
I was supposed to probably shoot 90 that day,
mm-hmm.
But to shoot 77 was something I'll always remember.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you go from golf pro. Did you wind up getting into building out of being a golf pro? How did that work?
Yeah, so when I was the golf pro, there was a gentleman that came and worked for me, and he was working in the golf shop some and working out on the golf course some, and he had retired from an insurance agency, and again, much older than I was, but we had become friends and chatted all the time, and he decided he didn't want to stay retired and play golf. He wanted to invest in a home building business. And there was one, the Battle Creek Golf Course had homes being built around, and so he invested in this business, and then we would chat about that every time we would be working together. We'd talk about the houses they were building and things like that. And after probably a year and a half or 2 years, he decided he didn't want to invest in one. He wanted to own his own business, and so he started his business. And I told him probably within a week of him starting his business, I was like, I've always loved architecture. I've always loved looking at houses. I had kind of pursued a landscape architecture path and maybe designing golf courses because I loved golf and architecture. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I can see myself working for you. I love real estate. And, probably a year later, the time was right. And I called him and I was like, you know what, I think I'm done in the golf business. Golf business is tough because in the summertime it's 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And I'd had my first child at the time, and so it wasn't a family-friendly opportunity. And so I joined his team as a salesperson in real estate, and was selling houses and did that for probably 6 to 8 months for him. And he came in one day, and we had maintained a great friendship, and he said, I've got an interesting proposition for you. His son-in-law worked for him as his job site superintendent, and his son-in-law was getting ready to start military officer school, was going to be gone for 8 weeks. And he said, we've got 37 houses under construction, and I've never really built houses. I personally had never built houses. He really hadn't built houses. He had just kind of been the management. He said, get in the truck. We're going to go out and we're going to learn how to build houses today. And so I was like, well, that sounds interesting. And so, we went out and, looked at these houses and talked to the superintendent or talked to the subcontractors that were out there and figured out what was needed next and what material was needed. This was like 2005, 2006 timeframe, and that's how I learned to build houses. Was basically, here's the fire, you're thrown in it.
Yeah.
We've got to finish these houses for the customers, and so I started in as a superintendent role. And 6 months later, the other superintendent that was there, he had moved on to another career path, and so I'm the lone man standing, 6 months experience now building all of these houses. But it was a great opportunity for me to learn because I was forced to learn. There was no other option.
Yeah.
And but gained a lot of knowledge and stayed with that gentleman for probably another year and a half or so. I think I was with him a total of about 2.5 years. And decided I've learned enough now. Why don't I do this on my own? And so I started my own building company.
Really?
Yeah.
So was that moment where you decided to take a step out and do something on your own? Was there any fear, or was there more excitement? What was that experience like for you?
I don't know that there was much excitement. It was all fear.
It was
fear driven. It was when you're managing a company for someone. I guess the excitement is you potentially see behind the scenes and you see the finances and you're like, wow, this is a great opportunity. I mean, this gentleman is making a really good living, and for the most part I was managing everything, and I was like, why don't I do this for myself? But again, I hadn't done it before. I hadn't owned a business, hadn't set up a business, started paperwork or anything along those lines. And so a lot of fear, because I mean, you can go build a house, but is it going to sell? And if it doesn't sell, then that's not a very good career for you.
Yeah.
and so, yeah, I went out and I picked a couple of locations and built a couple of houses, and they ended up selling. And that's just kind of what started it. And it was like, that first year, it was a 1,800 square foot house for $180,000. And I would have people that would come through and they would look at it and they would say, gosh, we really love, what you're doing here, but we need a bonus room upstairs. We need that fourth bedroom. We need this. And so the next year I'd build a spec house. It'd be 2,200 square feet and $225,000. And after 4 years, they were all $700,000 and up. And I was like, I want to go back and build the small houses. But it was fun to be able to get creative. I loved that part of the building industry.
Yeah.
The creative side. It's basically a form of art, and putting it together and working with hundreds of suppliers and subcontractors to put it all together to, whether it was a $180,000 house or a $1.8 million house, it's someone's dream. It's their life goal. And you're able to put all of that together from a piece of paper and say, here you go, and see the smile in their face and the gratification they get.
Yeah. So one thing that I hear is landscape architecture. You liked thinking about that. You liked building houses. Are you a visionary type of person? I can see something.
Yeah. So I'm very unique in that, I mean, you can hand me a piece of paper and I can build it off the piece of paper. You can take me to a remodel project that probably should be torn down, and I can in my mind go back to 100 years ago when it was built and see the glory of the house and be like, you can take this back to where it was and put the color and the life back into it to where it's restored or built into something that it should be.
Oh yeah, definitely. So moving into those bigger homes, what year was this that you branched out and started on your own?
I started my own company in 2006. Great time to start a building company when the real estate market took a turn in probably the end of 2007. That was again another learning curve for me, because from what I was told for the 15 years previous to me starting my business, you could build just about anything and there was somebody there to buy it. And when, there was a lot of financial crisis and people were saving their money and they didn't want to buy or build houses in between 2007 and 2009, we really had to work on making our home stand out from the competitor's home. We had to work on the sales pitch. We had to work on the customer service side of things. It was not easy. It was, everything became very difficult to make sure that you could sell those houses instead of being an order taker, which 15 years before, they probably almost turned into just taking orders instead of working hard.
Yeah. Honestly, kind of like right now, probably.
It's similar to the housing market right now, in that you finish a house and somebody's standing there. Multiple people are standing there waiting to buy it.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So as you were scaling the size of your homes up, you were dipping into the economy of 2008. What was that like to experience that and to be building some bigger houses? Because whenever you're building smaller, there's a little bit more of a market. When you're building bigger, there's a smaller market, but a different type of clientele. So what was the experience like as you were building bigger houses? You might have been going through the financial crash, but you survived that and you kept succeeding in business. What was that like?
I think it's an achievement. I mean, any builder or business owner that goes through a financial crisis and comes out on the other side, I mean, they have to hold their head up high. And maybe they don't come out the way they thought they would or the way they dreamed they would, but they survived. And you have to work harder than anyone else. I mean, that's the mindset, is that if my competitor is working 8 hours, I'm going to go to work 10 hours. If my competitor has a process of scheduling 2 meetings with a client to potentially sell a house, I want to schedule 4 with them. Mm-hmm. I want to be in front of someone. I want to show them how creative we can be, how the quality that we were building, the financial oversight to make sure that it wasn't going to go over budget, whatever it took. And you had to kind of be a chameleon based on who the client was. I mean, some people were, they only cared about the creative side of things and what color the granite on the island was going to be. And others only cared about, was it going to be energy efficient and what were my monthly utility bills going to be? And others were, I want it to be safe for my family and I want to have a safe room and other amenities in there. And so you would always have to put that package together and work your tail off to make sure that not only you sold it, but then you followed through and you finished the product on time, on budget, because the easiest and best next home sale is coming from the person that you just sold to.
Yeah.
And they're going to tell their friends and invite them over for that housewarming party. And you want to make sure when they've got 20 or 30 guests in their house, they're all oohing and awing and looking at things and being like, wow, I mean, this is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And that customer is like, it is amazing and you need to talk to this person. Compared to, boy, this has been a rough experience. Don't go this way. I mean, you have to make sure that you have fulfilled your obligation, and not only fulfilled it, but exceeded it, and exceeded their expectations, so that they're out, screaming from the top of the mountains, this is the person that you need to be doing business with.
Yeah. So finding out how to work harder than your competition, but also go above and beyond for your clients.
Yeah.
And there's probably clients that were the ones that you didn't list that want it cheaper. So.
Well, and the ones that want it cheaper, and some of those people just have to go on to someone else. I mean,
sure.
you weren't able to win every single client over, but you had to be. I always thought you had to be open and upfront and honest with someone, and if you couldn't. If I felt like I couldn't meet their expectations, financially, quality, whatever it might be, I would have that conversation with them. And that is something that probably gave me 2 or 3 sales, because they were like, wow, I really appreciate you saying that, because there are companies out there that will tell you exactly what you want to hear. And 6 months later, that might not be what you receive.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, setting that expectation so that you can exceed it is going to set you up for success.
And let's talk about that, because you set this expectation up for your client to do the best that you can to deliver on time, on budget, a really good product. There's so many things, like so many intangibles that go into building a house. There's so many variables, supply, labor. How did you manage all of that? And was it stressful for you, or did you enjoy the managing process of getting things done in a timely period, in the right way, and exceeding your clients' expectations?
So I've always enjoyed. I'm a numbers person. I mean, math was my strong suit in school, and logistics. I mean, I just get enthralled in logistics. And I mean, you put together, 7 suppliers and 8 subcontractors in 1 week, and how is it all going to work together? Yeah. That's my sweet spot. Like I'm out there with them. I want to be in the middle of it. I want to be directing traffic. I guess I should have been a flight coordinator, bringing airplanes in, because that, I mean, I love that part of the home building business, or any business, is being able to coordinate and plan and then see that all come to fruition.
Absolutely. So going in from building, you wound up getting involved in the HBA, and you wound up getting on the ladder, which the ladder is basically to become the president of the HBA. And you went through that. How did you get in the HBA, and what experience was that like going through that?
So right after I started my own building company, I had known about the event called the Parade of Homes here in Tulsa, and they're all over the United States. Very successful for the builders because of the traffic that comes through. And so the first opportunity that I had, I knew that I wanted to participate in that parade. And you have to be a Homebuilder Association member to do that. And so I filled out the application, got approved. The first probably 2 years I was involved, I was a member. I had my home in the Parade of Homes and reaped the rewards and the benefits of all of the advertising and promotion that provided for my company. I started to attend a couple of events, and I'm not a big partier, networker type of person. I'm a pretty internal, shy, bashful person until I really get to know you. And what I found was I enjoyed the volunteer opportunities where we could work together. If there was a manual labor job, or if there was a project that needed to be completed with the HBA, that's what I really enjoyed. And I was networking with people without really knowing it, because we were there to accomplish a task. And so I started probably 2008, 2009 volunteering, and just kept taking steps into higher roles at the HBA here in Tulsa. And eventually in 2010, I was asked to serve as president of the Builders Council, which was just the council that had topics for all the builders in the community. And went through that year of leadership, and that kind of opened the door for me to serve on their board of directors and serve on their executive committee and some higher roles. And I think it allowed the membership and the current board to see my work ethic and my leadership skills that I was still growing at the time, and gain a lot of respect for me, which helped me in my business. It gave me relationships with other business owners that I was working with, where typically I was just working with a salesperson. Now I had contacts with the business owners, and that was a great benefit. But it led to the board asking me to serve on that ladder, and that's the 3 years of 2011 through 13 to be secretary, vice president, and president. And I was asked to serve. At the time, I had 3 young children, and I went home and I talked to my wife about it, and I was like, at the time I was still, in my late 20s. And, as a home builder, you don't see too many home builders in their 20s. And so a lot of customers, they would shy away from me for that very reason. They would go to the more experienced builder. And so I talked to her about this opportunity to serve, and I was like, this is a great credential opportunity for me. If I can show the HBA that I can serve as president, then that's an opportunity that I can also show the general public that I'm respected in the industry. And so I took it head on. Again, she supported me, my wife supported me, and took it head on and served those 3 years. And in 2013, served as president of the local HBA. 70-year history at the time, and was the youngest president ever of the Tulsa HBA, and still even today is served as the youngest president of the HBA. And it just was, you talk about developing leadership skills again. The local HBA has 1,000 members, 70 on the board of directors. And here, the day I was installed was about a month before I turned 30. It's installed as president. It was about a month before I turned 30. And so I'm standing up in front of builders and business owners that have been doing this for 40 or 50 years, and I'm trying to lead.
Yeah.
And so again, I was thrown to the fire and thrown to the wolves. But what a great opportunity to go in and work with what I considered my peers. I don't know that they considered that of me, but I considered that of them. And to be able to lead them and lead that organization in 2013 was amazing.
Yeah. Was there any people, going back to the very beginning when you started, that really kind of opened their arms and was very inviting to you to get to know you and learn from and to kind of take you under their wing?
I think, several. From a business owner or an associate professional standpoint, I gained a lot of respect from them from where I was volunteering, and they could see how hard I was working and getting jobs done. And a lot of the builders in the association weren't doing that. They wanted to stay at the board level, and they didn't want to get down in the weeds and work hard. And so I had a lot of people support me. And then your father, Rob Miles, he was serving as president in 2011 of the HBA, and he saw what I was doing and had a respect for me. And again, not growing up in the business and not having second generation, you're third generation, but not having the older generation to help you. I leaned on Rob for my knowledge of building, and then for my knowledge of serving in leadership. And he was always there. I remember we would go to lunch, just he and I, probably 4 or 5 times a year.
Really?
And sometimes I felt like it was a crying fest for me. Like, how can this continue to happen? And he'd be like, "Been there, done that, Jeff. Like, here's what you need to do." And I would leave that lunch, and I'm like, "Gosh, it's true. I mean, this too shall pass." And no matter how bad you might think it is that day, there are great things lying ahead, and you have to work your way through the valleys to get to the mountaintops where you're going to rejoice.
Yeah, and that's one thing I wanted to touch on is just learning who were those people that kind of took you under their wing, kind of helped you out at such a young age, because that's very young to be, president of the HBA and get involved in that. And then also when you're young, getting involved in an organization that's predominantly, I would say the majority is older men and women that have been building for a while. And there's a story I want to touch on because I think it speaks a little bit about who you are, and you get to understand why you've been so successful at such a young age, but throughout your life. There's a story that my dad's actually told me. You touched on him. You guys were at a big meeting that was involving a big decision for home building, and so there's many people at this meeting, and they ask about doing something that would change the way things had been done. And you actually stepped up and spoke in front of all of them, saying a reason maybe why that shouldn't be done, because you felt that way towards it. And I think that in itself is something that is it doesn't happen very often, because you're stepping into an environment that is very uncomfortable. There's people around you that have been doing it for longer. What made you, or let's just go back to the start of that. Why did you feel and have the conviction to step up and take ownership of the idea and the thoughts that you had?
I think everyone has their principles that they believe in. And, this was a topic that was brought up at our State Homebuilders Association. And the conversation was, increasing the amount of dues that our members would pay. And again, being a numbers guy, I had looked at the budget and I knew what I was looking at, and I knew that it wasn't necessary to increase the dues. Like, there was other things that could be done. There was savings that could be had on the expense side of things for that organization. But the easy thing is always to say, hey, let's just increase what everybody pays us, and that covers, everything else. And that was the direction the conversation was headed. And in fact, everybody in the room except for myself was ready to vote and pass this and really not think twice about it. And so the president at the time had stood up and he said, "Is there any more conversation?" And here I am, in my 20s, and like you say, I mean, the room is mainly pale and male. These are definitely my father figures, or some even my grandfather figures that I'm in the room with, and had been in the business a long time and very well respected. And I was like, what? I was like, I just don't feel like it's right to do this at this time. And so I stood up and I was like, I just went through what I had researched, and I said, I've looked at the finances, and the association doesn't need this extra money right now. They might need it in a year, but they don't need it right now because everything was fine. And I was like, there's other ways that we can save money. And I feel like that it's not in the best interest of our members. And I was driven, I'm driven to lead for others. And so I was thinking about, back home in Tulsa, Oklahoma, here's 1,000 members that we're going to have to pay probably just $25, a very minimal fee. So really it wasn't that big of a deal. But I was like, they were going to have to pay $25 more because this group of people sitting in this room felt like it was the easy thing to do. And I when I stood up and spoke, I was like, I think we need to work harder on saving money and figuring out where we can cut these expenses. And then if all else fails, then we need to increase our dues. And wait till the last minute to do that, because once you increase it, you're never going to bring it back to where it was. Mm-hmm. And that $25 increase to someone could mean the difference between them renewing their membership or joining the organization or not. I mean, maybe that was the threshold that they, it was $525 instead of $500, and maybe that was the threshold or whatever it was. And so I spoke for a couple of minutes, and nobody really said anything, and then they proceeded with the vote. And typically you're in a big meeting, and I've been in probably 1,000 at this point. And if you call for a vote, I've probably had 5 votes out of 1,000 meetings where there's actually been a yay and a nay.
Yeah.
It's either all yay or all nay, but everyone votes the same way. And so they call and they call for the yays, and everybody's yay, and they call for the nays, and I just loudly say nay. Mm-hmm. And probably half the room turns and looks at me, and I just sat there and I didn't smile. I voted no. I still believed that we should have worked harder. But I also understood and agreed that I was part of that group that had voted to increase the dues. And once I had stated my case, and it did not influence anyone's vote, and I voted the way that my conscience told me to and how I believe my principles led me to, then I would move on from it. And I wasn't going to complain about it, and I wasn't going to go out and tell everybody that I voted no, but it is what it was. That gained me more respect from my peers than anything I've ever done, because when that meeting was over and we walked outside, or we walked up to have a cocktail, or whatever we went to do next, there must have been 20 or 25 that walked up to me, and they were like, that was really impressive, and I can't believe that you really did that, and thank you for looking at the financials, and thank you for thinking about that. And really then for 2 or 3 years after that, anytime there was a financial vote, they would always in the room be like, where's Jeff at? What's Jeff think about this type of deal? And so that's the respect that it gained. And it was like, I'm no smarter at financials than anybody else, but I just stated my case, and I felt like I had to. And I respect now that others in the room respected what I was doing.
Yeah, what a powerful story and powerful lesson. Because just the fact of standing up for the convictions you believe in, when it's uncommon, when it's something that maybe most people would not do, that speaks volumes of what you talked about earlier, honesty, and then also integrity is another word that I think of when I think of that. So what a great story, and obviously I'm sure that gained a lot of respect that day. And I've always loved that that story. My dad's only mentioned it once or twice maybe, but I think there's so much to be learned from a story like that. So let's transition. You're the president of the HPA. You're still building houses throughout this whole time. And then you wound up getting the CEO, EO position at the HPA of Tulsa. What made you want to step out of home building and into that position where it was full-time, you're leading the organization? Just kind of describe that experience.
Yeah, so, I served as president in 2013, still heavily involved in 2014. By 2015, was stepping back from the association in a lot of ways to focus on my business, family, other opportunities. And late summer 2015, I got a phone call from our former CEO of the association, and he had accepted a similar job in Raleigh, North Carolina. And he was just calling to tell me that he was leaving. We had become friends, serving with one another, and had a great respect for one another. And so I went home that evening, and having dinner with my wife and family, and I was like, you're never going to believe the phone call I got today. I thought this gentleman was going to serve until his death, really. I mean, this was the perfect job for him. And I said, he's leaving. He's going to North Carolina. And within 2 seconds, my wife, Ashley, is like, that's the perfect job for you. and I'm like, I have a job. That's kind of a slap in the face. But I kind of like building houses. And so we, laughed about it and chatted about it. But, it moved on from it. And the association formed a hiring committee, and they had put me on the hiring committee to hire the new executive officer on this search team. And so the very first meeting, this is probably 3 weeks later, we go into this meeting, and here I'm at the table again, and there's builders and business owners, and there's 8 or 10 of us in the room, and the current president at the time is serving as chair of this committee, and he starts out by saying, okay, the former executive officer is going to be with us about another 3 weeks, and how do we want to do this, and what's the process? Do we want to hire a headhunter? Do we want to do this on our own type deal? And someone at the table, says, this would be a lot easier if the right person would just apply for this job, and the right person sitting at the table. And everyone at the same time, I'm sitting at the table, everyone's table looks down at me, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. Like, my wife's told me this, all of these people are looking at me, and I was like, I have a job that I really enjoy. And so I was like, no, I'm happy with what I'm doing. And so continue on down this pathway, and probably another, 30 to 45 days passes. And I've been helping with the search committee, and the more I'm thinking about it, and the more I'm, listening to, how the conversation went with my wife and how the conversation went there. And I just had a passion for the HBA and everything that it was doing, and the nonprofit side of things, and the service to the members in the community. And I think the final trigger was we got our health insurance bill. And we had 3 kids at the time, and my wife and she was self-employed, and I looked at the number on the health insurance bill, and I was like, the HBA provides insurance for their employees. And so, I sat down with my wife again, and I was like, let's have a serious conversation about this. And she was supportive of it, and it was definitely a complete different career change. I mean, when you work for yourself, you're not reporting to anyone. You can take off as much as you want, but you have to work as much as you want, or as much as you don't want. Yeah. I was like, if I go to work for somebody, like, it's an 8 to 5 job. I mean, this is going to be different for our family. And she said, you should try it. And so I called the current president, and I was like, man, you might kill me, because they were interviewing people at this time. They were flying people in from out of the state, and I was like, you might kill me. I was like, but I'm going to resign from the hiring committee, and I'm going to send you my resume. And I was like, I want you to continue down the process you're on, because I want the association to hire the best candidate possible. But I would ask for your consideration in hiring me or looking at me. I have no nonprofit experience. I have no executive leadership experience. I mean, I served as president, but that was from a volunteer standpoint and not a staff management standpoint. I've owned my own business. I've done some things, but I'm not the perfect candidate on paper. I have no college degree. And there's nothing
on paper.
On paper, if I gave you my resume, you would probably just throw it in the trash and be like, I don't know why this guy's applying. But the relationships I had built, and I was probably the perfect candidate. And so they went through the process in November of 2015. They called, and they were like, you are the best candidate. And so they offered me the position, and I wrapped up my home building company within 3 or 4 months and finished the houses I had going. I worked dual roles for that 3 or 4 month time frame, and it's been the best decision for me and my family for the last 6 years. I get to still be engaged in an industry of home building and remodeling that I love. I get to fight for them. I end up at City Hall or the state capitol or in Washington, D.C., fighting for home ownership, which I strongly believe in, fighting for affordable housing, whatever that price means, as long as it's affordable. And I get to be a part of people's lives that I then had grown up for probably my building career. I had grown up with a lot of these people, and now I got to maintain that, and so it's been amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, as you look back and you tell that story, you talked about relationships. You had developed relationships with the people in the organization that made the decisions, not knowing that they would make the decisions, but you had made the choice a while back to get to know people. And then you also have always made the choice to work hard no matter what you're doing. And so that's apparent by the things that you did. So you're working alongside, volunteering with these people. And obviously they like you, but more than that, you're working hard and seeing the hard work and the diligence that you have towards the things. And then also some stories we talked about, you have honesty and integrity. So all these things, add up, and they lead you into a position to where now you're serving as a president people within the home building community, and anyone really in the real estate community as well, because there's lots of associates as well. So it's fun to see the progression of ways we may not know how things are happening in the moment. They all serve a purpose in some capacity, and you can only know that looking back. Yeah. So I think that's a really cool story to hear how that came about. So right now you've served in that capacity. What have you learned in a leadership position? Because you have employees and then you have tons and tons of members that you have to lead on a daily basis. What have you learned about leadership? And what have you has leadership changed from what you thought versus what you do now?
I think, again, you go back to your principles of leadership, and those don't change as quickly, but I would say leadership changes every day because, I manage a staff of 8. I consider them my team. They're not my employees. We work together. If we have an event, I work as hard as they do. I'll take the trash out. I will jump in and serve as bartender.
Put on a flamingo outfit.
I'll put on a flamingo outfit and promote the event. Whatever it is, I'm not the person that's going to say, you guys all go do this, and I'm going to sit back and sit on the throne as the CEO of the organization. So I'm in there with them. You're all the time with volunteers. I'm the chief cheerleader for them. I'm encouraging them. I'm like, hey, I need your help planting flowers. Doesn't that sound like fun? But we'll get 4 people to come out and plant flowers, whatever it might be. Just always learning how to work with people and what it is that they're looking for. And I've always said, leading, if you're going to lead properly, you have to lead people in the right direction. And if I have a staff member or a volunteer that has a direction they want to go, and let's say that direction is they want to increase there's a volunteer member and they want to increase the amount of business. Well, I want to lead them to support the association, but knowing that they're going to be increasing their business because of people they're around. Mm-hmm. I'm going to connect them with the right people so that they come out of that opportunity, that volunteer opportunity, thinking, wow, that was amazing. Like, I increased my business, and I leave the table thinking, thank you. Like, we got this project done, and you guys did amazing at it. It's always evolving into something else every year. And knowing that, there's no leader that's an expert in everything. And so finding those individuals around you that are better than you at something and getting them on your team instead of against you is huge. Knowing that you can call on certain people and they will respond because of a mutual respect that you have, and they won't look down on you like, I can't believe you don't know that, or you can't do that on your own. Mm-hmm. But they appreciate the opportunity to step up to that level, and it makes everyone look better. And so that my boys play baseball, which is a team sport, and so that I've always kind of thought leading as a team. But I'm not the coach necessarily. I'm maybe the captain of the team. I'm out there with them, and I'm going to support that, because if I'm going to ask someone to get sweaty and dirty and who knows what else, I'm not going to stand back with a suit on and with a lemonade in my hand. Like, I'm going to be right there with them, and I'm going to gain that respect for them, because like you said, I go back to times when I first got involved in the organization where I was on my hands and knees at our home and garden show doing landscape. And there was a lady around me that was yelling at me sometimes because she didn't think I was doing it right. That lady now serves as probably my most valuable financial expert in the association. And I can call on her and be like, don't make fun of me, but I'm going to ask you this question, like, what do you think we should do? And it's a great conversation that we have. And sometimes it's just talking to someone else about it, and then you come up with an idea, and it's like, great. And I don't take credit for it. I just, we do it as a team. Like, everything is moving forward together as a team.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you ever heard of Donald Miller or Bob Goff at all?
I have not.
There's a story that when you're talking about leading and how people want to be led, there was a conference going on, and I can't remember which one of those guys it was, but they wound up saying, okay, everyone stand up, we're going outside. So they go outside, and he gets to a certain point wherever he wanted to be at, and he stands up on a platform outside or maybe on a wall or something and says, I just wanted to make a point showing you that everyone wants to be led and taken somewhere. And it's just a matter of, are you going to take people in the right direction like you talked about? And are you going to be there going into the weeds with them instead of standing back and just watching?
Yeah.
So I think that's a powerful lesson. So let's quickly talk about your family. You said your boys play baseball. Talk about, one thing I do think when I look back at your stories now, you've always, when there's been a major decision, you've always gone and made a decision with your wife. How did you guys meet real quick? Because she was a golfer, wasn't she?
Yeah, so my wife played golf at Oral Roberts University, and they were practicing at Battle Creek where I was working, and so that's how we met. We spent several summers playing golf until 9 o'clock every single evening. That was our dates, we would go out on the golf course and fell in love, and really the only love of my life as far as dating someone goes. And we got married at a young age. I think I was 20, she was 22, still finishing up her college degree. And again, it's the team atmosphere that, I mean, we've done everything together. And we decided to have children at a fairly young age in today's world. I mean, we were 22, I think, when we had our first son. We now have 4 boys that range from 17 to 2. And they have all of their activities, and we support them, and we travel the country watching hundreds and hundreds of baseball games every single year. We chase a 2-year-old around the ballpark. But we still make time. If there is an open night during the week, we all sit down at the dinner table. And the dinner might be macaroni and cheese and corn dogs. But we will sit down at the dinner table and just kind of relax and chat about what's going on in everyone's life. And I have a lot of respect for my wife, and in return, her for me. Our kids have a lot of respect for us, and it's just a great family environment. And there's not too many times that I won't be receiving a recognition or talking, like in an interview like this or something like that my wife doesn't come into the conversation. And she is part of my leadership style, my leadership skills. She's part of my team. And so I wouldn't do anything without her approval and support.
Yeah. How has she made you a better person?
Oh, she kicks me out of bed every morning and gets me going. I think just the unconditional support. Everybody goes through ups and downs and loss of family members and things like that. And just knowing that, we're able to do it together. Managing calendars with 4 children is difficult. Managing a schedule of events. The Homebuilders Association puts on about 100 events a year, and managing that schedule, and not having regrets about it, and not being supportive of it, and knowing that, okay, this is a big deal for my husband that he has to be at this event, and so we're going to be home by ourselves again tonight. But she understands that, and then, like I said, when we get together as a family, everything is fun. When we get back together. Yeah,
that's awesome. And you said your boys play baseball?
2 older boys play baseball. My oldest plays for Owasso High School baseball right now. He's a junior in high school. And then I have a 13-year-old that plays competitive or travel baseball now. 11-year-old that played baseball for 3 years, and it was absolutely not for him. He despises going to baseball games. In fact, he was just telling me last night that he's going into sixth grade next year, and he is super excited for the band. And neither of the other boys played band. I played band for a couple of years, and so that's going to be a new adventure for us. But my wife and I will be fully supportive of it, and if we have to listen to the trumpet or the drums in our house, then that's what we'll do. And then the 2-year-old, I mean, he's a baseball fanatic. He if you give him a ball, he'll throw it at you, and it's time to play catch. And that's 24 hours a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So they're fun.
Yeah. Well, I know we got to get you out of here because there's a big game tonight for you. But we've got a little bit of a quick round for you, a little fire round. Yep. So finish the sentence. So I'll recite or I'll say something, and then you can finish the end of the sentence. So you can do anything if.
You set your mind to it and work hard.
Favorite team?
The Atlanta Braves.
Atlanta Braves. Perseverance means?
Sticking with something until it's complete.
Patience.
One of the most important things you can have.
My mission is?
To serve others and make sure that they are successful.
Awesome. What do you have a certain piece of favorite advice that you've ever been given?
Oh man, I don't know that there's one thing that anyone's told me. I would say again, it's just the little things growing up with my mother and my great uncle, and that it's always, get the little things done, and if that means making your bed every day, it's a task that's accomplished. And I know there's some great YouTube videos out there about a Texas college graduation about that. Yeah. But that hit home, and it was like just accomplish the little task, because it's amazing how good you feel when you accomplish something. And if that even means making your bed, if you go look at it and it looks nice, you're like, oh, I did that. And then it's great when you come home and you don't have to do it later. Yeah. Or the laundry, or, cleaning or vacuuming the room, whatever that
Carries
might be.
Over.
Yeah, it's just, pick out a task and accomplish it, and you will go far in life.
This podcast is called Building Excellence. What do you think building excellence means to you?
Building excellence would be building your team, getting the right people on that team. And if you have people on that team that aren't the right people, find where they can fit in. Everyone is good at something. Everyone is an expert at something or passionate about something. If you put them in the right opportunity, you will all succeed, and you will have an excellent team.
Jeff, thanks so much for being on the show. You're a heck of a builder, built some beautiful homes, but you're a heck of a leader, and it carries over into what you do on a daily basis. So thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep.